Welcome to the Florida State podcast of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, where we showcase student entrepreneurs to learn about the startups they are working on, check in with alumni to hear about the companies they are building, and learn from seasoned entrepreneurs who have built amazing companies. Hosted by Mark McNees, a serial entrepreneur who has started for-profits, nonprofits, social impact companies, and is currently entrepreneur in residence at the Moran School of Entrepreneurship.
We're excited to have John Wilcox, the founder and CEO of Diatech, with us today, a MedTech startup that implements innovative solutions to enhance and empower the lives of patients, families, and communities impacted by diabetes. Welcome, John. Could you tell us a little bit more about your company?
Yeah, and thank you, Mark, for having me to represent Diatech. You know, we are a company that recently was started out of FSU. We're all recent graduates of Florida State and different interdisciplinary focuses that we were able to study as students. But we all came together, myself and the three other co-founding members, Nicholas Cooper, our COO, John Clark Gray, who is our CSO, and Luis Blanco, who is our CTO, and myself being the CEO. We're just students that had an idea and were personally connected to a problem and decided to do something about that.
And that problem is diabetes. Mm-hmm. So how did the idea of Diatech come about, and why is this technology important? And if you could explain the technology as well.
Yeah, sure. So Diatech was founded off the problem of insulin pumps not working correctly. So for those who are unfamiliar with insulin pump technology, it's a type of medical device that people with diabetes utilize to continuously give themselves their life-saving medication, insulin. And so at any time a person is using this technology, the flow of insulin can be disrupted, it can fail, and there really isn't any reliable way to tell a patient that's using that technology when it's not working. And so we've...
Let me interrupt. So yeah. Why is that a problem? What could happen if it stops working?
Right. And so a patient with diabetes that could not get their insulin if they're using a pump could ultimately have their blood sugar get affected very severely. And so that was really the issue at hand, is that these amazing pieces of technology still seem to have some issues with being able to deliver that life-saving medication and keep patients' blood sugar in line.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a personal problem. You know, I'm a type 1 diabetic myself. I utilize an insulin pump, and so going throughout college and dealing with this myself, it was very intriguing to be able to start a company based off of things that I was experiencing as well.
So this is very personal to you.
Yes.
And is the pump failure, would you call it a pump failure?
Mm-hmm.
With the pump failure, did that ever happen to you, or did friends and family, like why did this become top of mind and a problem that you wanted to solve?
Right. So personally, you know, I was experiencing insulin pump failures throughout my time in college, even up until today. Wow. And I still, you know, frequently have to have kind of a keen understanding of when those are happening. Unfortunately, many patients don't have that understanding because of a lack of education towards this type of problem. I worked in a pediatric endocrinology office throughout college, and seeing a lot of children come in with insulin pumps, you know, having affected blood sugars because of technical failures with their pump. It just seemed absolutely ridiculous that kind of was the standard.
Right.
And this technology is amazing. However, making it better so that patients like those children with insulin pumps, like myself, mm-hmm. and other people who have to suffer with these complications, you know, can trust their technology and know that it's working.
That's really, really interesting. So for those of us who are unfamiliar with type 1 diabetes, can you explain what it is in layman's terms, and how is it treated?
Sure. So I kind of like to compare type 1 diabetes to kind of a lock and key mechanism. So a person with diabetes cannot produce that key, which is insulin. And insulin allows for all the sugar in your body to go into your your cells, and you can effectively live. Now with diabetes, you can't produce that insulin, and so there's no way for that sugar to get into your body, and it just sits in your blood. It can really impact you acutely and chronically. So, kind of looking at how that affects a patient, it can be, again, very severe if it's not treated.
Okay. So at the Jim Moran School, we teach our students that they need to create a value proposition for their product or service. Essentially, I know you know this, but for our audience who may not, essentially a value proposition is why would somebody buy your product or service over somebody else's? Like what problem are you solving? And I know that you've touched on that, but do you have in your mind, or could you share basically Diatech's value proposition?
Sure.
Like why is it important for you to exist?
Yeah, so I know we mentioned it a couple of times about what the technology is looking to solve, but the technology itself is called SmartFusion. And what SmartFusion is a system for insulin pump users to use in tandem with their diabetes pumps. And so it is a sensor-based system that can connect to the flow of insulin pump technology and tell the patient if there's any interruptions in their insulin delivery. And so it's coming into kind of a form of a disposable portion that also connects to the pump. And this feature ultimately would look to tell that patient when their insulin isn't working. Now, that's the physical value proposition. We see a more pivotal value proposition being based on the fact that a patient can start to trust that their technology is working in real time. And so playing off the fact of a patient needing to have that trust in their technology is where we see ourselves coming into and providing that value proposition so that they know that they can.
Okay. So without giving away any of your company secrets, can you kind of explain what it looks like and how does it work? Is this a completely new pump system or is it a variation? What is this? What is it?
So the technology can sometimes be difficult to describe as a medical device, but to put it in layman's terms, it is an accessory portion that can connect to insulin pumps that are on the market and that sense the specific fluid motion of the pump as it operates. And so kind of think of a little clip-on portion that can connect to the pump in line with the fluid that can then tell you in real time, that can connect to an IoT device like a phone, and then can tell the user if their pump isn't working. So kind of a modular clip-on piece that sits within the fluid line of the pump.
So this added aftermarket piece actually has an app component to it?
Currently, we're developing that as of right now, but the goal would be able to have an app component that could tell potentially a parent, a school nurse, or a caretaker if a child's insulin pump is not working. So kind of a remote monitoring feature. The goal is to get this technology to ultimately be integrated into an insulin pump. So rather than being an accessory or add-on piece, it's one that is adopted completely into the form factor of an insulin pump, and that's our goal.
So you've brought up children several times. Would you say that children are actually the target market for this, or the primary target market?
I would say yes, so there's about 550,000 insulin pump using patients in the United States. And we see a majority of those patients needing our technology. However, about 70,000 of those patients are pediatric diagnosed insulin pump users. And type 1 diabetes usually takes the form of being diagnosed at a pediatric age, but we know that there is a need by these children that utilize these pumps to really know when their pump isn't working, or for their caretakers too, because it can be very difficult for children with diabetes to really know what's going on with their technology. So seeing children and their parents as our primary adopters for our technology is kind of the move that we're making as a company. Not necessarily because we think it's easier to sell to parents, but we really see it more as a need for them to know if their child's pump isn't working.
Yeah, absolutely. If one of my children had diabetes,
Right.
that would, I could imagine sending them off to school, knowing that one of the current problems with these pumps is sometimes they don't work, and what happens if it doesn't? They're playing, yeah. So I think that's an amazing kind of iteration of what you guys are doing is super important. So that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
So entrepreneurship is hard.
Yes.
Okay,
very
so
much so.
it hasn't been all up and to the right, easy,
No.
yeah. So there's been difficulties along the way. Let's start with the good. Like, what has been one of the biggest wins for you and your company in going on this startup venture?
Sure, you're absolutely right. I previously was on track to attend medical school following my graduation from FSU, and I always joke with my co-founders about stealing them away from their amazing engineering job offer opportunities that they had, but we all decided to stick with it, and we've done a lot in the last year as a company, and I would say one of the most pivotal achievements that we've had recently was our graduation from a medical device accelerator in Memphis, Tennessee.
Very exciting.
Yes, it was amazing. We were very fortunate to be picked for that program, and we just have cleared a total raise amount of about $82,000 as a medical device early stage startup started by college students, and we're very excited to turn some of that capital into forward progress towards getting our clinically ready device ready for an FDA trial and then ultimately market entry, which we hope to do by mid to late part of 2021.
Okay, yeah, I was just about to ask what as soon as you say FDA, like you're like, okay, what's the ramp here?
People always provide, actually I should specify, investors always provide a very large amount of concern when it comes to our regulatory processes, which involves the FDA,
Right.
Our reimbursement, which involves insurance. We just were able to complete a regulatory FDA assessment with a consultant that we worked with in our Accelerator, and they proposed that we would, have a much more reduced FDA process than we initially thought. So this really kind of bolstered our timeline in regards to, or I should say, shortened our timeline
Right.
in our projections for when we could get this device out to patients.
Cool. How did you and your company get connected with the Accelerator in Memphis?
Right. So I think this is a really good opportunity for anyone that's listening to know that early stage company development is probably the most critical point for a venture. And there are resources that are out there that I suggest that you utilize to help you do that. You can be very prideful and try to do this on your own, but accessing mentors and capital that are specific to your stage of company is extremely important. So, the way that we found out about 0 to 510, which is the accelerator in Memphis, was actually through a mutual contact that came to Tallahassee. So we were very fortunate to be able to hear by word of mouth. But I would say for an average entrepreneur, a lot of great resources to find those types of opportunities are, quite frankly, quick Google searches. Going onto Crunchbase, which is an amazing resource if you all are unfamiliar with. So checking that out and seeing what investors, what organizations can provide capital with mentoring or curriculum, because I think that's the most important thing that entrepreneurs need at this stage. So I'll shout out StartCo, which is the kind of overall organization of that. Check that organization out. Future Founders, which is a phenomenal organization in Chicago that does a lot of work with early stage company development. And then, of course, if you're ambitious enough, looking at different accelerators within Denver, San Francisco, Boston. There's an opportunity for everyone in all different types of company fields.
So, hearing about all these other opportunities, were there resources here at FSU or the Jim Moran School or in Tallahassee that that came alongside you and helped this company progress?
Right. There was a recent Forbes article that actually just came out that suggested that entrepreneurs don't have to move away from their hometowns anymore to make successful companies. And I'm sorry I cannot quote the specific article, but that was so intriguing to me because FSU and Tallahassee and TCC and FAMU are in this beautiful, amalgamation of entrepreneurial ecosystem that is building right now. I mean, you're familiar with this, and a lot of people that we've worked with locally showcase that Tallahassee is a place to grow a business. I will say medical device is a little difficult due to the fact that we need access to certain amounts of capital and industry relations. But for other types of companies, I think Tallahassee offers an incredible opportunity, whether it's working with the Office of Economic Vitality, working with the Chamber, DOMI Station, TCC's Center for Innovation. All of these different places are amazing for FSU students. And the paramount one, of course, is this amazing new Jim Moran School of Entrepreneurship. When we were seniors, it was its first year. And we were so fortunate to kind of fall within that timeline because there were just so many resources that were offered to us.
From the Jim Moran School, and I'm so happy that you talking about the Office of Economic Vitality and Christina there and Antonio at Domi and Sudik over at the Chamber. We have this growing entrepreneurial ecosystem happening, and you're definitely a little early. It's getting a lot better. And forgive me, I don't remember. Was Diatech? Did you guys ever pitch at the Innovation Challenge? You did? Did you guys win?
So we were one of the winning groups.
Okay.
So I do believe we won the one of the $4,000
prizes.
You
got some resources
there.
And
so I would like to, of course, also shout out JMS for being able to be a main contributor to about our $32,000 in non-dilutive capital that we raised. And that was just a amazing experience doing the Innovation Challenge, applying for a micro grant for which you judged.
I did.
Yes, and that was amazing meeting you there for the first time. But these different opportunities, whether it is those two that I just mentioned, traveling to different conferences that have competitions and pitch competitions for students to participate in, there is a lot of funding that is available for student entrepreneurs. And exploring that, I think before you go into kind of looking into those early stage development programs that we were mentioning a little bit earlier, I think is the way to go. Utilizing these resources locally and then branching out to that next stage is, I think, a really great plan for students.
So you threw out a word, and I'm not sure if our audience is familiar with it, but I think it's a hot word for me, and that's non-dilutable.
Oh, yes.
What is non-dilutable?
Yeah, so...
Why is that important for a founder?
Yeah, I think it's super important for a founder at any stage of company development, but especially important for early stage company development. At any point, a company can... meet opportunities that can offer that company a benefit. However, some of those opportunities require equity. And so being very tactical on figuring out what opportunity is worth that equity is a very important decision you need to make early on as a company. So the best type of opportunity is one that doesn't take any equity, thus a non-dilutive capital or money that you can get for that. And so trying to avoid opportunities early on that take potential intellectual property or patent protection that you have, a percentage of your company, that's something that needs to be done later on. Finding these early stage capital resources, money resources that can help your company move forward, that don't take any cut of your company, is super important. And FSU offers a lot of those types of resources.
Yeah, they absolutely do. And this is one of the things that obviously is a hot topic for me, because I've seen so many entrepreneurs be taken advantage of by taking capital, and in the clause the investor is saying they're non-dilutable, which means they will always own that share of the company, and then everybody else loses equity along the way. And it's one of these little insidious things about entrepreneurship and funding that I really think, I wish more entrepreneurs understood. But most entrepreneurs come from a different background than entrepreneurship, right? Like medical devices and things like that.
Exactly.
So, I mean, these kind of like ways that the finance people kind of can play the game, sometimes. And to me, that's one of the benefits too of having an organization like the Jim Moran School or DOMI to be able to look out for these entrepreneurs.
Right, and it's very complicating. So for whoever's listening, know that I did not learn this overnight. As you said, I came from a biology background, never took a business class in my life, but decided to start a business. And that was a huge learning curve for me to try and figure out all of these details about investments and what type of investors you need. Not every company needs investment. Some companies can fly off into the sunset with revenue that they can produce early on. But for those companies that do need capital to get started, look into very early stage capital resources that don't take away from your company, because that can ultimately impact you very much in the long run.
There's so many founders who've been fired from their company because they made an early on decision and didn't realize they would lose control of their company.
Right.
And I just feel like you may have to make that decision, but you should know what you're deciding and what could happen. So.
Right. And if I may, just to share a couple more opportunities that I think are really great for maybe some early stage entrepreneurs that are listening. The local resources here at FSU are amazing. Of course, check those out at FSU Jim Moran School of Entrepreneurship. But also looking into national grants that many students at our university can be competitive for. That includes the I-Corps grant that can provide capital, SBIR, STTR grants. Just copy everything that I'm saying down into a Google search, and you'll see that these things that I just mentioned.
And we can put them in the podcast
notes
as well.
Right. These are national grants that can allow for businesses to gain that type of funding without taking huge cuts from the company. And I think those are really good resources that need to be checked out.
Cool. Can I ask you a couple more questions?
Of course.
Awesome. Yeah. So what has been your biggest challenge so far in getting to where Diatech is?
Yeah, so I'll comment on a literal and an anecdotal. On the literal side, I would say that my biggest challenge, and I think our company's biggest challenge, is sorting through the right capital resources. Kind of this topic that we've been talking about during this session. Finding resources that will invest the amount that we need for the equity that we are requesting, with the mentorship that will move the company forward. We have just started a fundraise to get us to our next phase, getting that clinically ready device. And it's very challenging. Fundraising is very difficult. So spend a lot of time on your timeline doing that. We're preparing for that. So finding the right investors, I think, has been kind of, ultimately a biggest challenge for us. And luckily, we have gotten some early stage investors who have been super helpful and are helping us get to more capital. Now, I would say a very difficult thing for me personally is the fact of knowing that my issue with insulin pump technology is not everyone else. I was not as privileged as I was, and couldn't afford their insulin where I could. And how dare I think that just because we have the same disease means that we have the same experience.
Right.
Being able to know that everyone's experiences are individual, even though you might empathize with them, has been super important for me to know as I try and provide a solution to my fellow patients with diabetes, knowing that there still can be differences despite the fact that we really relate. And so I need to always keep that close in to my heart when I'm being an entrepreneur and trying to help my community.
And then last question before I ask you just about what's next for Diatech is, what's been one of your biggest aha, or I didn't even know about that when I was going to start, that you've seen or you've experienced? Have you had any big learnings or aha moments?
Right. I think the one of the biggest aha moments that I have had, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself, I'm sure my co-founders might have different ones, is how dedicated you have to be to this. You go into starting a business knowing that you're going to put time and energy, but there are moments where your business will require you to move away from a place that you might have a loved one or family in order to make your business succeed. There are moments when you have to realize that you have to stay up like 3 nights in a row to get a deadline for something. And this shouldn't be to scare anybody, but it's just a reality. And I think I was a little naive to that reality when I started Diatech. Trust me, I've learned my lesson now. But just knowing that there is so much dedication that you have to put into your baby, which is your company, to make sure that it is growing and it's healthy. So I would say that that's probably my biggest aha moment.
Okay, very, very cool. So what's next? Where do you guys want to be in the next 3 to 5 years?
Right. So the future of Diatech is one that we see, with potential merger and acquisition. That's our goal as a company. We would love for our technology to be purchased or acquired by a larger insulin pump manufacturer or insulin pump company to put into their pump systems. We know going through our pitches and our business classes and our sessions that we have to gain some market traction. So we see ourselves in the next 3 years to have entered into the market with our device and hopefully gain enough interest from a larger competitor to buy our technology and ultimately exit. So that's our goal, and that involves a ton of steps. Our FDA process, figuring out our insurance coverage, getting our device completely ready for patient use. These things are important, and we're going to work on that as we get to that goal here in the next 3 to 5 years.
Fantastic. Well, John, thank you so much for coming in and sharing about Diatech and your journey, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much, Mark, and good luck to all the entrepreneurs out there listening, and thank you so much.
Thank you for joining the Florida State podcast of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. If you would like to be notified of new episodes, please subscribe via your favorite player. Also, if you like the podcast, please take the time to share it on social media, give it a 5-star rating, and review it on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you enjoy your podcasts. This will help us get the word out to other entrepreneurs that the FSU Entrepreneurship Podcast has been launched.